COVID case numbers in Queensland are on the rise as the state government scraps its day 5 test for interstate travellers. To talk more on the situation in Queensland, I'm joined by infectious diseases physician Professor Paul Griffin, who is live in Brisbane this afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Professor.
Good afternoon.
Professor, first of all, 1,158 cases in Queensland today. What is your reaction to those numbers?
Look, obviously that's a significant number of new cases, essentially what we expected to see, perhaps a little bit sooner than we thought. Of course, it highlights the importance of all the things we've been saying in terms of masks, testing and getting those boosters. And, you know, one of the main things, of course, is we need to look at how we're using our testing capacity to its fullest, given that we are seeing some delays in that at the moment.
Well, just on that, the state government has now scrapped the need for new arrivals into Queensland to take a day 5 PCR test. But do you think rapid antigen tests should be enough for those wanting to enter the state, given just how much of a lag there is in other parts of the country as well in terms of response?
I do. I mean, you know, I think we need to look at all of our testing resources and make sure we do use them appropriately, because it clearly does have a capacity and it looks like we're essentially exceeding that at the moment. We know rapid antigen tests won't replace PCR-based testing, particularly for people with symptoms, but as a screening test, particularly if we do more than one rapid antigen test, so maybe a test 3 days before travel and then the morning of travel, for example, then the performance will be similar and certainly enough to fulfil the screening function that we're doing that for. And that will, again, remove some additional burden from the laboratories and make sure those tests are there, particularly for those people with symptoms or who might be high risk or potentially suitable for therapies if they were to test positive.
What I am hearing is there is just a little bit of hesitation and perhaps even confusion out there. Can you explain the difference between the rapid antigen tests and the PCR, and are these rapid tests reliable enough?
Yeah, so with the PCR-based tests, basically we use very sophisticated technology to amplify the genetic material of the virus. Therefore, it's a very sensitive and highly specific test. It's been a really big strength so far, and one of the reasons we've had good control of this virus in this country. The rapid antigen tests use more fundamental technology, a bit like a pregnancy test for the virus. And the good thing about those is they can be done at home. They're often quite quick, 15, 20 minutes perhaps, but they're not quite as sensitive. So we can miss some cases early, particularly if we rely just on a single rapid antigen test. But if we do 2 or 3, for example, on consecutive days, then the performance isn't too far behind PCR, and it certainly would be sufficient for screening well people before travel. It would catch enough of those people, maybe miss the odd one, but catch enough of those people to reduce that risk sufficiently and therefore alleviate some of that burden on the pathology testing laboratories.
Look, Omicron is fast becoming the dominant strain of COVID. We know how quickly it spreads, how infectious it is. What is the difference between previous strains, and what symptoms should we be on the lookout for? Like, are there differing symptoms between previous strains and the Omicron strain?
I mean, we're learning more about Omicron every day. We still have more to learn. However, we still need to analyse large numbers of people infected with this variant to know with greater certainty some of its properties. It's clearly looking more infectious, and there are a range of numbers being used. And it does look like it causes less severe disease, but we still don't really have the data on long-term consequences of this variant. So I don't want people to be falsely reassured too much to the degree where people get complacent. We still need to respect this variant and do what we can within reason, of course, to control transmission. And, you know, by that, I mean specifically using boosters to our advantage and masks, for example. And in terms of symptoms, I think this variant has demonstrated that there's a wide array of symptoms, from no symptoms, particularly in vaccinated people, all the way through to things like fatigue being more prominent, or headaches, or even gastrointestinal problems. So people might have a stomach ache, for example, rather than the more traditional respiratory symptoms. But the message really is, if anyone has any new symptoms at all of any part of their body, then go and get a test, because we still want to, at this stage, find those cases so we can remove people from the community, hopefully only very briefly, to reduce their ability to spread the virus further.
Professor, it's New Year's Eve on Friday. I can't believe we're still talking about this. It just feels like it's been such a long couple of years. Can we expect to see things, or do you think we might see things settle a little once we're through this really busy peak holiday season with so much movement and, of course, so much enthusiasm to perhaps get into Queensland or other states?
I don't think we should be expecting things to settle. I think our response needs to align a little bit with what we're seeing in terms of cases and, for example, focus a bit less on case numbers and bring a little bit of common sense into some of these restrictions, like abandoning the day 5 test and relying a bit more on rapid antigen tests. So I think how we manage this will evolve to the point where perhaps it's a bit more part of our lives rather than it being such a drama every day in terms of case numbers. We are going to see cases continue now, particularly with this variant, and that's why we need to focus on the simple steps to try and control it, particularly getting those boosters out there. It might ebb and flow a little bit as testing rates change and people's movement changes, but I think at this stage we're going to see significant case numbers for at least the next few weeks, if not months.
Professor Paul Griffin, thank you so much for your time and for your insight. You've put it nice and simply. It all makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you.